This module of Inventor will include instruction on how to create a simple sketch, use of the revolve command, use of the revolve cut command, and use of the circular pattern command. To get started, we'll move our cursor to the upper left portion of the screen and we'll left click on New. And that will cause the new file dialog box to appear. And I'll move this down so we can see. So we'll left click on Standard Inventor Part, and we'll move our cursor down and left click on Create. And then we'll give Inventor a minute to load up all the files. And once Inventor gets done loading everything up, your screen should look similar to what is shown. We'll move our cursor to the upper left portion of the screen and we'll left click on Start 2D Sketch. Then we'll move our cursor over the front plane, the XY plane. We'll left click once. And now we are in the sketch area. The sketch tab is active, and these are the tools that we'll use to create some geometry. So we're going to start by creating an upside down L. So I'm going to move my cursor to the line command. I'm going to left click one time. I'll start down here and just left click, left click, left click, and just drag these lines so that you get an upside down L. Make sure the lines are perpendicular to each other. Now I'm going to sneak the cursor over here and I'm waiting for those dashes to appear that tell them I'm in line with the original endpoint. There they are. And we'll move down here and we're looking for that green dot. That tells us that it is a closed profile. Once I see that green dot, I'm going to left click once, then I'll right click once, and left click on OK. Now we'll use the dimension icon to dimension each of these lines on the sketch. So we'll move the cursor down here to the very bottom, left click on that one once, drag the dimension down, left click again. We'll enter 0.5. Dimension this line to 2, and I'm going to zoom out just a little bit and I'll push the mouse wheel down to pan it a little. We'll dimension this line to 1.5 and this line to 0.75. Then I'll right click, left click on OK. Now I need to add an axis line to revolve this sketch around. So we'll left click on the line command, left click on the left side of the sketch, and then right side of the sketch. The length of this line doesn't really need to be anything important. I'm going to left click on dimension, left click on each one of these lines, and we'll enter 0.25. That will create a half-inch hole once this is completely revolved. So now I'll right click, left click on OK, right click again, finish sketch. Inventor will zoom it up, so I'm going to zoom it back a little bit, push the mouse wheel down and pan it down. Now that after we've exited out of the sketch area, we're in the 3D model area, we'll left click on revolve. I'm going to use the pan tool just to move this sketch over a little bit. So the profile icon is already selected. I'm going to move my cursor inside the profile. I'm going to left click one time. Then I'll move my cursor to the axis icon, left click on axis, and I'm going to move to the axis line that I drew. Left click on that once, and we'll get a preview, and we'll left click on OK. And then we'll zoom out just a little bit. We can use the free orbit or rotate command to rotate the part around. Then we'll right click, left click on OK. Now we're going to use the revolve cut command to create a groove for a pulley. And the way we do that is to create a sketch on one of the existing planes, and we'll create some kind of a cutter that we'll use to revolve around and cut material out of this. We'll start by moving our cursor to the left portion of the screen and we'll left click on the little plus sign next to the origin. This will expand and show all the planes that are visible for creating a sketch. So the first plane we'll look at is the YZ plane. Probably aren't going to be able to use that for creating a sketch. XY or XZ plane, yeah, that one's probably not going to work either. The XY plane will be ideal for creating a sketch that we're going to revolve around this feature. So I'm going to move my cursor over the XY plane text in the tree. I'm going to right click once. I'm going to left click on New Sketch. Inventor will rotate it around. Now I'm going to use the free orbit command or rotate command to just rotate it off center just a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. Then I'm going to right click and left click on OK. I'm going to move the cursor up to the View icon, View tab. I'm going to left click on View. I'm going to left click on the little arrow underneath the Visual Style icon. And I'm going to drop this down and left click on the Wireframe Model Edges Only. Now we're looking at a wireframe version of our 3D solid model. Now I'm going to use the mouse wheel. I'm going to wheel it up here, get a little closer where I can see. And I'll right click, left click on OK. Then I'm going to create some geometry in here that's going to be a cutter. So I'm going to left click on the 3D model tab and then left click on the sketch tab, and that will put us where we can create some geometry. So I'm going to left click on this line and we'll just draw a triangle similar to what is shown here. And then I'm going to right click and left click on OK. Now before I go any further, I'm going to project some geometry off of the existing part onto this new sketch. In the book, the geometry is projected first. Either way, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to move my cursor up to the Project Geometry icon. I'm going to left click on that one time. Move my cursor over this line that makes up the back of the part, and I'm going to left click once. This yellow line appears, and that tells me that that is where the back of that part is intersecting the plane I'm going to construct this cutter on. We'll move the cursor down to the bottom, left click on that, move the cursor to the front of the pulley, left click on that, and then I'll move my cursor to the hole here because we're going to use that in midpoint of that for a revolve line. So I'm going to left click on that. And we'll right click and left click on OK. Now I've already got the cutter drawn in. Now we'll dimension it. I'm going to right click OK. And we'll start by dimensioning this cutter. So I'm going to left click on this yellow line and I'll left click on one edge of the cutter. I'm going to enter 20. And I'll left click on the other edge, the other projected line, enter 20. Now my cutter is not completely open here, or completely closed, so I'm going to right click, I'll left click on OK. I'll simply run up here and hit the extend icon, and extend it down, and I'll right click OK. Then we'll left click on trim and just get rid of this little edge, and I'll right click OK. And we'll finish dimensioning. I'm going to left click on the bottom part of the pulley, the bottom of the cutter, and enter 0.1. And we'll left click on this edge and this edge. And enter 0.138. And then we'll left click on this edge and this edge, 0.138. And we should be ready to revolve that and make a cut in this part. So I'm going to right click, left click on OK. I'm going to wheel it out just a little bit, and I'll right click again, finish 2D sketch. Oh, we have to do one thing. I forgot. I'm going to hit undo. We have to draw a line in the midpoint here. Left click, right click, OK, and we have to delete the yellow lines. So I'm going to move the cursor over the back of the pulley where the yellow line was projected. I'm going to right click and left click on delete. Any of the yellow lines have to be deleted. Right click delete, right click delete, and right click delete. Okay, so now we have our cutter. This line is a revolve line, so it can stay. So I'm going to right click, finish 2D sketch. I'll move up to the revolve icon. I'm going to left click on revolve, and we'll move it over here just a little bit. So the profile icon has been selected. I'm going to move my cursor inside the little cutter. I'm going to left click once. Then I'm going to move my cursor over here to the axis icon. I'm going to left click one time, and I'll left click on the axis line that I created. And right now it is adding material, so our cutter's not cutting anything. It's extruded material above. We want to cut, so we move to the cut icon. And that area that it was trying to create material in is now red, meaning it's going to subtract material out. And then you left click on OK. And we now have a groove cut in our pulley. And we can't see it very well, so we're going to move our cursor up to the View tab, left click on View, left click on the little arrow underneath Visual Style, and we'll left click on Shaded with Edges. And now you can see we've got a nice groove in our pulley. And we'll right click, left click on OK. The next thing we're going to do is add a sketch to the front of the pulley here and use a extruded cut to cut a hole in it. Then we'll use the circular pattern command to create a series of holes. So when I move my cursor over this surface, when it becomes red, I'm going to right click, I'm going to left click on New Sketch, and Inventor's going to rotate it around. Now in the book I use a line that is drawn from the center, and then the end point of that line is the center of a circle. You can draw a line if you'd like, or you can just draw a circle and we'll dimension it to the center. If you left click on the circle icon and move the cursor over till you get kind of in the middle, Inventor will find the middle of that part. Left click, drag a circle out, left click, right click, OK. I'm going to left click on dimension. I'm going to move it to the edge of the circle, not the center. Drag the dimension out, left click once, enter 0.5. And then to dimension to the center, we left click on the center of the circle, and then we just left click on the edge of the part and it'll find the center. We'll drag that out, we'll enter 1.5. Then we'll right click, left click on OK, right click, left click on Finish 2D Sketch. I'm going to left click on the 3D Model tab, left click on Extrude. I'm going to move my cursor over. The profile icon's already been selected, so I'm going to move my cursor over, and once I move it inside the circle it becomes red. I'm going to left click one time. Now Inventor's going to create a pin or a stud here because it's going to extrude material. We're going to use the cut icon, left click on cut. It will cut automatically, reverse the direction. We'll left click on OK. Use the free orbit or rotate command. Rotate it around, and yes, we've got a nice hole in the part now. And then we'll right click, left click on OK. Now we'll use the circular pattern command, which is right here. We'll left click on circular pattern. I'm going to push the mouse wheel down and just pan the part over. The features icon's already selected, so this is the feature we want to pattern. So you move the cursor inside the hole until the entire hole lights up, both front and back. Left click once. Then we come left click on the rotation axis. Move the cursor just to the very edge of the part. When it becomes highlighted, left click once, and a series of holes will appear. We'll just take the defaults. We want 6 holes. We want 360 degrees of fill, and we'll left click on OK. And we now have a series of holes in our pulley. And this concludes this module covering the revolve command, the revolve cut command, and the circular pattern command.